Good morning.
Morning.
Probably helps if I have my headset plugged in, not just on my head.
You're coming through loud and clear.
I am literally just finished my slides for this, so it's been a busy week, but that's okay.
Yeah. You ever feel like you're falling behind?
Oh yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, it's hard when there's just one of you.
That's that's for sure. It's even hard when there's a bunch of you.
Yeah, that's fair.
So don't beat yourself about the head and shoulders too much on that one.
I was telling a couple of people about when I was talking about this session yesterday that when I go to conferences, a lot of times the librarians that are talking about AI stuff and are like presenting, they're from like, big R1 institutions like Ohio State or U of M, and like they are like their title is AI librarian. Like that's literally
Yeah.
all they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I was playing around a little bit with Notebook LM and its search features, what they call it, the discover
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it, and comparing some of its results. Some of the early videos of how you would team up Notebook LM with Perplexity, and you know, Notebook LM has actually rolled in that search component into itself, so you really don't need to have Perplexity. Uh, Next thing I'm investigating is how you can dump out the list of sources and cite them in the document, but because
Mm.
I know a lot of folks are really interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can click on each of the sources individually before you bring them in to determine whether or not they are a valid source or not, and
Mm-hmm.
actually read the whole thing. So it's quite a bit of power there that's still yet for me to discover.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's quite something. Hi, Ashley.
Let's try this again. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
Like, I felt terrible because I'm presenting this thing on a technology topic and Outlook was just being a real pain.
I know it. I know it. So we've racked our brains on figuring out how to get events like this out there and be able to attach where they can click on it and it'll add it to their Outlook calendar. I think that's our next, after this new website's launched, I'm going to totally redo Employee Central. And that's one of the main things is having a main calendar of upcoming events and being able to add, because
Yeah.
then like we thought about creating like a Teams calendar where we add all, but then everybody would get all of the events. So it'd be nice to pick and choose which ones you want to attend to and then have it on your calendar.
Yeah. Well, and then I got because finally got I figured out how to take the calendar invites and separate them out, and it has to do with new Outlook or old Outlook because
Oh,
I use new Outlook. And I also created this event in Teams thinking, oh, this will be better. No, no, it was worse. It was a bad idea.
it's never easy, is it?
So, so yeah, that was uh, a learning experience. I'm wondering if we were to do this again, if I were to set them up in like a webinar thing, and then you can just like
That's,
register for them. It's
that's
still an
true.
extra step. Like I would still I just want people to be able to like have the ICS files and then be able to copy them to their calendar.
Yeah, I think,
So
yeah. Well,
Well,
without having to like spam everybody with
yeah.
1,000 million. emails.
I
So
agree.
Well, did you get the email from Brittany, which had the ICS files?
yes, and that's what took me forever to get them out. And but then I heard from a few people that they wouldn't copy to their calendars because I hadn't invited them, even though I allowed forwarding. So I don't know anymore.
I love tech when it works.
I know it was like,
Problem is, I don't know if it's the operators or the tech.
yeah,
Probably a little both. Because
yep.
the darn stuff changes and they don't tell you necessarily personally, but they made a change.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild that Teams and Outlook don't work nicely together because
Yep.
I mean, you would think that they would, but they don't. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to wait a couple minutes just to see if we get anybody else joining. Um, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I see a lot of new faces and some familiar faces as well. So, um, we were making a joke that there was starting to be like amongst when we were doing some of the faculty focused things, there was starting to be an AI usual suspects. And so I was trying to get this series out to more people so that we can have a little more broad focus on these types of conversations. But I also know it's a Friday in June and everybody's trying to use up their PTO. And so that's why we're recording the sessions as well. So this is just going to be a really basic intro session. We're going to kind of go over a lot of basics about what generative AI is, how it works, some of the different considerations, some of the tools out there. We will do a little bit of sandbox stuff where you can get into being able to play around with some of the tools as well, and we'll kind of share out some of your experiences with those. But it's kind of, if you are newish to AI, this is a great session for you. If you are, somewhat experienced, then there might be a lot of stuff that's very familiar that you've already heard before, and that's all okay. And I'm absolutely open to ask questions at any point. You can, raise your hand or stop me or anything like that, especially if I kind of go off on a tangent because I do that sometimes. Um, so yeah, I think we'll go ahead and get started. And then as if people are able to join a little bit, then hopefully they can catch up with us later. So this is just our basics. Welcome. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a session overview here. We're going to be talking a little bit about what is generative AI, how it works, what are some of the tools that are out there, um, then some pros, cons, considerations, things that we need to be thinking about. And then we'll do a little bit of the hands-on prompting practice along with the discussion and wrap up at the end. So like I said, at any point, feel free to interrupt, ask questions, throw them in the chat, raise your hand, interrupt. Any of that is totally fine with me. And then I did want to be transparent with you and say that I did outline my slides using Claude Sonnet 4. I haven't used Claude that much. That is one of the various AI chatbot models out there. So I used that one to brainstorm and give me some basic ideas for my slide content, but I did create all my slides myself in Canva, which is my favorite. So just to get a little bit of a background about what is generative AI, or it's starting to be called GenAI some more, which I don't love as a person named Jen, I have to say, especially a person named Jen who talks about AI a lot. But here we are. So generative AI is artificial intelligence that creates new content. So um, instead of just returning back and regurgitating content in verbatim that it finds elsewhere, it is creating new content and in a new format. So most of the time that means that they're not going to submit back to you. You would never get the same response back twice because they were always creating something new out of the input that they've gotten. So it can create text, images, code, audio, video, more. Basically, if you can create it, it can in some way uh, put put that data out there for you. It is specifically built to respond to our human prompts and requests. And it is different from search engines or other forms of artificial intelligence. So, like your news feeds, your Netflix recommendations, any of those things. So, like I said, it is creating new content in response to your prompting as opposed to just returning stuff that already exists, or like in some senses, like um, the in some senses like your Netflix recommendations, those are training off of what you're putting into it and what it thinks that you're liking, but it's not like creating new shows for you based on what you like. So that's kind of a little bit of a difference there. Although I can definitely see a future in which there's something like that that happens. So there are different types of generative AI tools. There's your text creation. So what a lot of us think of when we think of generative AI, your chatbots, so your chat GPTs, your Geminis, your Claudes, all of those. You have image creation, so that's where you can get into photo editing or quote unquote art, because that is still very much under debate whether or not what artificial intelligence spits back at you is really art. Um, and there's some really interesting different perspectives on that as well. But it will generate back for you an image that looks like a piece of a digital illustration, if you will. It can also create diagrams for you, which is really helpful and handy, especially if you're into a more visual learning style. There's audio and video generation. This is getting really good. The audio generation is kind of scary because AI voices are getting really good. It'll pause and say in there. They can clone people's voices. This is where we get kind of concerned about deep fakes, especially as the videos are starting to look more realistic. Like the first kind of AI videos that came out that were completely generated were really uncanny valley and scary, and now we're starting to get stuff that looks much more realistic. Um, and then we also have code generation. So this is one of the things that it kind of learned quickly because code is very formulaic, so it can help with programming assistance, debugging. This is where we're seeing a lot of potential for job displacement because there is more people experiencing using AI to just like read over their code or generate code for them. And then you have your multimodal one. So the bigger platforms like your chat GPTs, like your Geminis, those ones, a lot of times it's turning into one-stop shopping, especially for text and image, where it will just create something for you all in the same window as opposed to having to go to a separate application. And I think that that trend is going to keep going. So how it works, what's kind of going on under the hood. So these models are all trained on massive data sets. Both the open and the not open internet is a lot of times what we think of, but it can also be trained on other data sets as well, depending on what the model is. But if we're talking about something like ChatGPT, it was trained mostly, we think, on the open internet, so like Wikipedia, Reddit, various websites. So massive amounts of data. And just like to be perfectly transparent, I am not an AI expert. I talk about it a lot, but like I'm not an expert in this area, and I'm not a complete tech person. So like a lot of the ways that the really nitty-gritty technical stuff we are not going to get into that here. But it's definitely stuff that we have available through the college if you are interested in learning more of those like really technical things about how this works. So this is just a high level look at it. Um, it just learns patterns. So it's looking for patterns based on language, style, and structure. And then it's going to predict what comes next based on that input. So it really is very much like your autocomplete on, you know, times 10,000. So it is taking what would normally be your, predicting your next word in your sentence, but instead it's just predicting a whole bunch of words at the same time based on what it has recognized as being quote unquote acceptable in that situation based on your prompting. So it gets feedback on that from humans. So there are humans involved in this training process as they're training these language models. And it gets feedback on that output, and then it will change and adapt based on that. So if you're like, no, that's why you see that thumbs down button. If you've used a chat bot, you're saying, yes, that was a good input, or no, that was like really, that had nothing to do with what I was trying to ask. And it will take that into consideration, and that will influence whether or not what its future outputs will look like. So it does not have, despite all appearances, it does not have true understanding. It does not know what it's saying. It does not know why it's saying it. It's going, okay, this is this pattern based on what I've seen on the internet. This is what the next thing should be based on the data that I've gotten, and so on. So it is used that pattern matching to mimic human speech patterns. Um, so it takes that training data and we get that pattern learning, we get that prediction, and then we get that output. And that is done in unsupervised for the most part. So as opposed to somebody telling it what it should be doing every step of the way, they kind of gave it the basic instructions and then let it go. So in a lot of ways, we don't 100% know why it comes to the conclusions it comes to. Even those models that are saying that they're showing you the steps that they're following the steps that they think they should be following based on the patterns that they've observed. So this is where it gets really complicated and kind of starts bending people's minds a little bit because we want to anthropomorphize it. We want to think of it as a human, but it is not a human. And even though it really sounds like a human response, it is really not. And it is not thinking of things in that way at all. But this type of model of learning is really the game changer. This technology that underlies all of these large language models, this is what's going to be a huge game changer for artificial intelligence as a whole field. And when people are talking about how these technologies are going to be changing our lives and taking our jobs, and a lot of that is because of this underlying model here, and how that can be applied in different fields. So we're talking about like for medicine that you could be training on huge data sets of X-rays or images or something like that so that it can detect cancers to a minute level before anybody's ever seen anything, before it would ever be detected by human eyes, maybe, because it can detect those little tiny flaws before, to an extent that humans might not be able to see as readily. So that's that kind of that technology behind that where we're going to get a lot of impacts. It's not going to be necessarily ChatGPT doing that, but it is that technology that made ChatGPT possible. So we've got strengths and limitations here, just like with any tool, there are things that it's really good at, there are things that it really struggles with. So it's really great with like your first draft generation. So if you're looking for something that you want initially that you can then take and edit and refine, it's great at that. Um, so note that I'm saying first draft and not final product because what it's giving you You probably know better than it in terms of your context and what you actually want it for. It's very good at pattern recognition, like I was saying. It can identify those trends, those formats, those structures from examples, and then return that information to you based on that, um, based on those patterns that it's found. It's super good at brainstorming and ideas. It will come at things from different approaches. It will come up with maybe ideas that you haven't heard before, but maybe they've been out there and they've just been on a corner of the internet that you haven't visited before. And so when it's putting all of that stuff together to generate a response back for you, it's coming up with those kinds of ideas. Um, and it'll give you some creative alternatives too. So sometimes it's a great jumping off point in that way. It's really good at explanation and simplification. So taking concepts and explaining to them and explaining them to you in regular everyday language. This is especially helpful in an area like academics and higher learning, where I see this with students a lot, where they're reading a scholarly article for the first time, and it is just piled deep in those $50 scholarly jargon words, and they're going, what is this trying to say to me? So you can copy and paste that into a language model, or you can feed it into the model and have it distill a summary for you. Like, you can tell it to explain it to you at a high school level or a middle school level or whatever. Just the more specific, the better, and it will kind of give you a good idea of what that's actually trying to say, so that because I know for me, sometimes I see a lot of those like statistical analysis terms and my brain goes, and it just turns off. And so it kind of helps push you past that. It is also really good at presenting multiple perspectives. So you can ask it for pros and cons and different perspectives on a topic, and it will give you that back. Because again, it's been trained on this massive data set of information, all of these inputs created by a whole bunch of different perspectives. And so it can give you those different perspectives back. It does struggle with current or live data. So even though it does look like it's searching the web sometimes and returning website results, those are not like live websites. They're usually like screenshotted from the past at some point. Um, and so like if you're looking for real-time data, like I don't know, you want reporting on analyzing a sporting event that's happening like right at this moment, it's not good at that. Or like current live happening events, it is not good at that. There is a cutoff to its training data set. It is not great at fact verification. It is getting better at least telling you where it got its information from, but it may also still confidently state incorrect information. That's called a hallucination. We see that happen quite a bit with citations, where it will just like spout off something that it'll come from a real journal, it'll be a real volume and issue number, but the article doesn't exist. Or maybe the author exists and the article sounds like something they would have written, but they didn't actually write it. And that is something that we still see quite a bit as well. It is not great with human nuance because, again, it has no idea what our context is, what interpersonal dynamics are. It is just looking at patterns. And then it's, ethical judgment. It does not really know what ethics are, other than, ethics as a pattern overall. So would not use that to make complex moral or professional decisions. And then we confidential information, not a great idea to be feeding that into AI, because there's a number of safety rails and guardrails that are not really in place, especially for a lot of those more widely available models. So just as a crash course to some of the major text-based tools that are out there, these are the ones that most people are familiar with, and this is absolutely just scraping the surface of what's out there. There are a bunch of other smaller ones that are out there that have, their own little niches that they fill. So this is like just getting to the surface of what these are. So this is your bigger platforms like ChatGPT, which is done run by OpenAI. Uh, Obviously, the one with all the name recognition right now. We aren't entirely sure of what their training data set is. We are guessing a lot of times based on what we've kind of gleaned, but they've been, despite their name being open, they've been rather closed in some of their disclosures with those things. And the paid version I've found will analyze spreadsheets. All of the other ones really struggle with analyzing a spreadsheet and returning data to you. ChatGPT seems to be the best one with this. So there you are. The paid version specifically. Gemini has a whole bunch of different stuff out there that's from Google. It is integrated with all the Google services, so it's what will pop up with if you use Chrome. Everybody's favorite AI overviews from their Google searches. Those are all powered by Gemini. They are all trained on what they call publicly accessible data. So I'm going to guess that means anything that Google can reach with their trawlers. That's what Gemini was trained on. And then the paid version includes the Google One suite. So all those benefits that come with that. So additional storage and then access to some of their beta features and stuff like that. So that's kind of like their big suite. Google has a whole bunch of different AI tools, and we'll kind of show those off later, but their kind of umbrella language model is Gemini. You have Claude, which is what I used for this presentation. That is run by Anthropic. They kind of have billed themselves as the ethical AI company where they are wanting to push more for oversights and regulations, but also not. But also, yes, I don't know. They're kind of they want to be ethical, but they're also doing a lot of the same things that the big guys are doing to make money. So your mileage may vary on that one. It will format a lot of your output. Like, so if you ask it to create a diagram, it actually, without being asked to, it will generate HTML code to make that thing display for you as a graphic, which was kind of cool. And it will put it into a separate document also. So if you ask it to like create a report outline, it will put it into a separate document that you can then export like right away without needing to copy and paste. So then you get all that formatting. It'll have longer conversations with you, but I have found that the free version runs into more backups than other like Gemini or ChatGPT do. Usually the other ones will be like, oh, you've run out of prompts for this level. You have to go down to this level or this model in order to keep using it. Claude will just be like, nope, you're done for right now, which is what the other models used to do also. Copilot is Microsoft's Gemini, I guess. It's built into all the Office applications. So if you've seen that in some of your Outlooks or your Microsoft Word, it was initially built as a partnership with OpenAI. I think it's kind of diverged a little bit from that. And it's most used by like your Fortune 500 companies and stuff like that, businesses that have big partnerships with Microsoft, which tends to be a lot of large companies. And they're the ones that are leveraging a lot of the Copilot stuff, licenses and different things. So almost all of these are like a freemium model. There's some free version that's available to you that'll have a limited option of the features, and then you have to pay to access the big fancy stuff. Then we get into your visual and creative tools. And like I said, some of these are built into those models that I was showing before, especially like just general image creation. But then there's other things too that you have to go out to a separate platform, or maybe it works slightly better if you go into its individual interface. So for images, we have Dolly, that's an OpenAI thing, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. I did leave off from the other slide Meta. So the parent company for Facebook has a large language model called Llama. And that is an open source one. So that kind of tends to be used the most by researchers. So if you're ever like going on a scholarly deep dive on AI. A lot of them will be talking about using Llama. Meta's image generation is based on all of your Facebook and Instagram posts. So I've found that a lot of those are they tend to have really good image generation, and especially when you're looking at generating people, um, at least in the last couple of months. So that's something to know when people were, there was a few years ago, there was this big thing about Instagram and artists' rights, and they were like, oh, Instagram's going to take your copyright for your information. And they were like, no, no, we're not going to like try and sell other people's stuff. No, they just really wanted to train their AI on their images. So that was what that part of the terms of use was. Um, so just something to keep in mind with a lot of these networks and models, like what you put in there is fair game. Design tools. Canva has some great AI tools, so you can actually use their Canva docs to like generate an outline of a presentation and then also just take that outline and it'll turn it into slides. I did not use that for this one, but I thought about it. I am very particular about slide design, and I found that AI slide design is not the best, and I just end up spending more time than it's worth. I could do it faster. Um, but it is really interesting because it'll use that to like transform your slides or transform some of your designs into different sizes. It'll generate images right within your presentations for you. Adobe Firefly, very similar. It's the generative images and generative features that are within the Adobe suite. And so Firefly is kind of a standalone, but also can be integrated within the Adobe like Photoshop and stuff like that. For audio and video, these ones are crazy. Google just came out with VO3. The publicly available one is VO2. If you use their labs feature for, they have a video tool called Flow where you can create different scenes. And that one uses the VO3 image or video generator, which is I used it the other day for the first time and it is wild. Um, there's like you can generate music using like the one of options is like Sonato was one that I heard recommended from some classical music folks. There are also ways that you can generate, like if you come up with a melody for something but you're terrible at orchestration, you can have it generate chords to go along with your melody. So if you've ever been interested in music composition, that's a thing that you can do now. You can take lyrics that you've written and have it generate a tune to go along with them. Um, all those kinds of things. Those are all different types of applications for music specifically. There's Speechify, which will take your text and generate it into an audio output. Notebook LM um, will take data that you upload into it and turn it into like you can have it create like a 15-minute summary podcast where it discusses between two AI generated voices. So that that is another interesting thing. So deep fakes are definitely concerns with those because they really mimic human voices and they can sound like real people. For learning stuff, I just tried this out for the first time. I've been learning French on Duolingo. Duolingo Max keeps getting pushed to me, and I tried out their video call feature. So it was a little hiccupy, but they have you talk to an AI voice, and so you'll say basic stuff to it, and it will chat back to you. I mean, I'm at a very basic level of French right now, so we did not go past much beyond like bonjour. Comment ça va? Ça va bien. Like, hi, how are you? How are you doing? And then au revoir and goodbye and all of that. But it was really interesting to have that with a little avatar conversation. Um, Conmigo is Khan Academy's little like learning bot, and then Notebook LM, which Larry's going to do a separate session on later this summer. That is kind of specifically tailored toward learning and, you know, toward putting your learning material, your own learning materials into an interface and having it chat back with you like based on those materials. So all very interesting. This again, there are literal websites, and Sonia will go over this in her session next time. There is a whole website called like There's an AI for that, because there are so many different types of generative AI out there for all different applications. Like I've heard of people being able to take pictures of their backyards, and then they feed it up into ChatGPT or something else and ask it to come up with a landscaping suggestion for them based on what they've put in. I think that there is a lot of opportunity there for some like horticulture companies where they can just like um, create a tool like that and be like, okay, and these are our plants that you should buy to go into this design that we've just generated for you. You know, pay a flat rate for the design, and then we'll give you a recipe for what you need to plant in your whole and how to care for it. I can see that coming if it doesn't already exist, uh, which I would find personally very handy. But there's all interior design, you name it. Like there's a whole bunch of different options that are out there. There's too many to be familiar with all of them. I'm pretty sure the people that are aggregating those are using AI to aggregate them because there's just so many. Um, so getting into the good, the bad, the ugly, as we were talking about that. So there's a lot of benefits as we've been discussing. There's one of the things that you may have seen if you're using auto-generated captions, um, that is an accessibility thing that is made possible by generative AI. That technology has been able to skyrocket and go much faster. So you're able to live caption events in real time now, which is really cool. It'll do almost instant language translations that like if you have if you use Google Lens to like go over like a package of Chinese or Japanese foods or snacks. My husband is in China right now, so when he brought stuff back, we used Google Lens to try and like sort of figure out what the things are by using that like visual translation. And it'll give you simplified explanations of things too. So like from an accessibility standpoint, there's a lot of really cool things that AI is able to help with. Um, for research assistance, like I was saying with those AI aggregating sites and tools, it can like comb through and summarize existing data so fast. It is mind-blowing. It can help you brainstorm search terms. It can give you some web links to the open web in terms of articles on specific topics. Yeah, it takes a bit, but it's really if you're using that like deep research mode that ChatGPT and Gemini both have, that's kind of what they're doing, is coming back with a lot of that information for you and aggregating it into one place. In terms of time savings, you can use it to automate routine tasks, create schedules for yourself if that's something that's helpful. Brain dumping, just like giving it all the things that you have to do, create a schedule for my week that's optimized based on this. If that's something that's helpful to you, creating a to-do list, different things. Brainstorming is another way that it can save you time as well. Like if you're just like sitting there in front of a blank page and going, like it's really good at getting those ideas moving for you, getting yourself unstuck, coming up with different ideas. Um, I had it help me come up with some ideas uh, for making my library tours a little bit more interesting, so that I'm not just talking with people all the time. Talking at people all the time, not with is fine. Um, which is nice. So especially from an accessibility standpoint, if you are a little neurospicy like myself, I have ADHD, my brain goes, and sometimes it can be hard to pin down those thoughts. And so it is very nice to be able to finally get those like all in one place in front of me. It reduces overwhelm in that way. And I'm able to nail down some things that have been spinning around my head anyway, but I can get them into a final result a little bit faster than on my own. It also brings in those different perspectives. I've seen people use this other ways before in that, you know, if you need to take yourself out of the equation for some reason, like if you're crafting a response to a situation that you have a really emotional or heated response to, then you can get on, like you can, one, catharsis, dump those feelings out into the chat bot and then have it like craft a response for you that maybe is a little bit more dispassionate, and get another eye on your writing, as it were, so that you're not sending that really uh, ill-advised email. Maybe you still do. I don't love it when the AI tone polices me. Like there has been a couple of times where Outlook has, I don't know if any of you experienced this ever, where Outlook was like, oh, do you really want to say this sucks? Um, and I'm like, you don't know who I'm emailing. But it does help sometimes to get that extra eye on your writing and help make sure that you're uh, approaching things from a professional standpoint. In terms of the bad, so there are some limitations that we should definitely be aware of, and we kind of touched on them a little bit as well. Hallucinations, it'll confidently state incorrect information. Bias, there are biases in training data, and there are biases in those giving feedback. Um, there is context loss, so there's not a lot of memory in some of those longer conversations, or if you're uploading a ton of data to it at the same time, it can't handle that sometimes. That's where I get, that's where, you know, the spreadsheet thing, a lot of them have trouble processing spreadsheets. It's just like too much. Um, there's not, like we said, there's not true reasoning. Even if they're showing a line of thinking there, they are just mimicking patterns. There's not logic there. Um, but it, gosh darn it, does it feel like it? um, and then there's no real-time data that we talked about before as well. So we're not like really open browsing in the real time. Uh, we're not, it's not evaluating those information resources. It's just pulling back stuff. So it's using already existing contexts for pulling those things back. So there are real drawbacks in terms of some of those limitations. There are also a lot of serious concerns. And this is where when you get a lot of people coming back with real knee jerks, AI is terrible, like AI is going to, you know, destroy us all. This is where a lot of those concerns are coming from. And like a lot of things that are new and scary, there's a real tendency for binary thinking. So there's a lot of people that are like, AI is the best, it's going to save everybody, and it's you know, there's nothing bad about it. And then there's another camp of people who are like, you mentioned AI, it's terrible, we're going to shut down, and you know, you are the worst person for even uttering the two letters AI in the same sentence. Um, I think that we are grown adults and we can hold two things in our brains at the same time. So here's some of those concerns that all the people that AI is evil are talking about. So there's data privacy. We talked about that a little bit earlier. There's no guarantees of secure data. There's no real assurances of how your uploaded data is being used. There's sometimes they're saying that there is, but you know, I would take a lot of that with a grain of salt. Um, there are real serious environmental impacts to the use of AI, and we're just really starting to understand what those are. It uses huge amounts of energy. One prompt in ChatGPT, I think, uses about 10 times the amount of energy as one Google search. So, and it uses huge amounts of water in order to cool those data centers where these transactions are happening. Um, and this is just like the AI that we have right now is very basic. What they're going to be implementing and trying to implement in the future is going to use even more amounts of energy. And the thing about this is that it needs to be powered constantly. So a lot of like solar energy or wind energy that can be inconsistent, and we don't have a good way to store that energy right now to be used for later. That makes renewable energy not the best. And so we're getting into a lot of questions about how do we come up with the energy to be able to power all of these data centers, and then what are the impacts of that going to be? So there's a lot of real questions that are happening there. Um, there's intellectual property infringement. There's a whole slew of lawsuits between artists and creatives that are wanting to know why these AI are able to generate images in their very unique style that is um, infringing on their ability to be able to monetize what they do as artists and creators. They're uh, they were not asked or compensated for um, these models being trained on their data or information. Um, and a lot of cases, especially with like novels or books, those were copyrighted and they were still trained on them anyway. Like a couple of the models are able to spit back the first. We can tell that they were trained at least on the very first Harry Potter in its entirety. And so there are some real concerns there about how these models were trained and with what data and how and how those people might be compensated for potential loss of income because of that infringement. There's obviously the real threat of job displacement. That's a real worry that people are talking about. Your employer wants you to use AI, the employer is going to replace you with AI. There are eventual impacts on a variety of professions because of what this can do. And then there's misinformation and over reliance. This is a lot of the discussion that I hear with faculty. It can spread false information that looks real. And we see that with like a lot of fake news stories on social media. And then there's the over reliance on it. So you just become too reliant on it, generating all of your responses for you. It's diminishing your critical thinking skills. We're all going to turn into those people like in Wall-E, where we're just sitting in our chairs all day long and staring at a screen and not actually doing anything anymore. That's that's a concern that a lot of people have as well. So we go from that right into prompting basics. So it's like, okay, that was a rough transition, not gonna lie. Um, so yeah, there's some things that we can hold in our brains about it being not so great, but there are also some real good things that it can do for us as well. And part of learning that is how to use the actual prompts. And so um, when you're using a chatbot, it's important that we are specific. It can't read your mind. So if you're very vague with your prompt, you're going to get vague results back as well. So it's important to tell it exactly what you want, to provide context, so background information that will improve that output, and to set expectations with it. So, what kind of format are you looking for? How long do you want it to be? What kind of tone are you looking for? And you want to iterate, so refine it based on the results that you get. So a weaker prompt would be something like write a story about a bear. That's pretty broad. That could be a whole bunch of different things. We can get everything from Paddington to Cocaine Bear. Those are both stories about bears. So, you know, there's a wide variety there. You don't know what you're going to get. A stronger prompt would be to tell it to write a 200-word story about a bear who goes shopping for new glasses. There are no humans in the story and all the animals talk. So we're kind of setting up more of a like Zootopia vibe here. Um, Again, the more specific and like that's not the strongest prompt that could be. That could be a lot stronger. You could give it a lot more details about the world for it to create that prompt, but you kind of get an idea that the more details, the better. So now we can kind of look at some of those different models out there. I'm going to go out to some of the different ones and we can try a few different things and do some guided prompting. But first of all, I was going to show off that we have a few different models. Can you all see my screen with the ChatGPT? Yes, I have a thumbs up from Larry. Wonderful. So let's say first of all, you can see you can actually dictate your response to it. I don't usually talk to mine. Um, that is a level of personalization that I don't love, I'm not gonna lie. So you can actually tell it to, it says what's on the agenda today. So you can tell it to, you are you are a great storyteller. So now it's got autocomplete for your autocomplete. You are a librarian at a community college. That is a very short prompt. See, and I didn't tell it to synopsize a specific database, and that's what it did because I was not specific enough, or I was too general. What I was really looking for is what a database actually is, and not not a description of a specific database. So, that is an example of iteration. I was not specific enough, or like what I thought I was describing was not what the language model thought I was describing. And so then we have to pivot and change. So that's a little bit about like what these are. And if you're looking to like, I know we're running low on time folks because I jam-packed us full of stuff. So let's do a little bit of practice on our own. I have a prompt here that I'm going to paste into the chat. You are certainly welcome to use that prompt. You can also use your own prompt if you so desire. And I'm going to encourage you to take this prompt and try it on its own as it is, and then you can modify it to mention your specific role. So you can use any AI chatbot of your choosing. So if you wanted to use ChatGPT, that's chatgpt.com. Claude is claude.ai. I'll put those in the chat as well. You've got Gemini. Those are kind of three of the major ones. If you've used other ones before, you are welcome to use those as well. So what we can do is try that prompt. We'll give it a couple of minutes. You can try the prompt and then modify it with your specific role. See how that changes the prompt, and then we can kind of talk about it either in the chat or in real time. So you can kind of see my response is already tailored to the library, and that is because I have a ChatGPT Plus subscription that I've already tailored it to, like you can say in your profile what you do and what you're using it for. So it already knows that I'm a community college librarian, which is why some of the responses tailored to the libraries here for you. Yeah, and Suzanne, you make a good point about the response being okay, but not your language style. And it is, uh, a lot of us can detect when somebody's used AI to respond to something, um, because there's just kind of that generic writing style that it has, because it, again, it is just, recognizing patterns and giving you stuff back. And this is the pattern that it's recognized as the most acceptable to the widest majority of people. And so then you get kind of very, I don't know, unoriginal writing style in response. I think it's interesting too, um, so Sherry, thank you for sharing your response in the chat. With the format is almost exactly similar to the response that I got from ChatGPT. It's kind of like reiterating the question and then coming up with the um, some of the different things were a little bit different. The suggestions were a little bit different for Sherry's response versus what I got, but very similar in structure. Yeah, you could reiterate it. So like, yeah, let's iterate this based on that. So you could also like read tell it that, you know, how might I respond just for being funny. Change my response to be more abrasive. And it's still using a very similar format. It's like this is a more direct, no nonsense version that offers support but with a tougher tone. You've got to get organized and take control where you can. Get a planner and use it. Talk to your professors now. Well, it's just kind of a little bit of a different tone to it. But it's still kind of like it's still being fairly nice. It's not it's but it is a different tone as opposed to the more like I wouldn't necessarily describe like it is a little bit more brusque, but it's not what I would consider abrasive personally. Um, but yeah, those are things that you can explore when you're prompting and making sure that you are iterating on those prompts to try and get, but like you can see where this is a good place to start. Because again, as Suzanne said, or as Sherry brought up, like the responses are very similar, but it at least gives you a jumping off point for, okay, these are things that I can make sure to mention. And often I'll almost consider it more like notes and I'll have it off to the side and be like, okay, but this is how I really want to say that. Um, yes, add warmth, telling it to change its tone a little bit more. My, I think the tone that my had initially was a little bit more, um, talking about like taking care of you. It is funny too, like some people have talked about like one of the hallmarks of AI being the M dash right here, because it really likes to use, I like to use M dashes. They're like my favorite thing because I always, my brain just has side notes all the time. And so I was like, I don't, it's taken the M dash from me. Oh, yes. Right. We'll ask it to craft its response as if written by Dr. Seuss. It also likes to use selective bolding to make things stand out to you, which is kind of a writing for the web best practice. Um, I think that's interesting. But listen up close and take it from me. There are some small steps to help you feel free. Make a plan, take a stand, and write it all down. Use calendars, lists. Don't let chaos crown. Talk to your teachers, say what you need. Most will be kind. They'll help you succeed. So it can also be a nice um sort of comic relief. So just to before we as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to show off Google Labs. So these are all things that you can get into with a Google account. Um, they have a whole bunch of different projects that they're working on. So this is just kind of interesting to see in terms of what they have available. The Career Dreamer one is really interesting. You can tell it like what you're good at, and it will give you different paths that you might be more suited to if you're looking to make a career change. This is really interesting, especially for working with students, and they're like, I don't know what I want to do, and you're like, well, what are some of the things you like and some of the things you're good at? Um, so that's a kind of interesting tool that they have. The video effects and those are really and image FX. Those are interesting ones that do image generation. Um, they also have like home automation scripts for your Google Home if you're a Google Home user. The music FX lets you craft different types of like instrumental music. Apparently, you can create custom AI generated chess sets. My son likes both chess and macarons, so I think he would like that. Um, so just like a whole bunch of different things that they're like, oh, these are different applications that you can use AI for. Like, so they have like their arts and culture with their National Gallery mixtape. This is just what's available from Google in their labs. Like, this is what I'm saying when I'm saying that there's like a bazillion and bajillion different types of things out there. All right, so being respectful of everybody's time. Are they free or paid? So I was able to get into this with my Google account even before I had Google One subscription. So you can actually get if you have a .edu email address, they have like Google um, oh gosh, what are they calling it now? Gemini Advanced Pro or something like that, Gemini Premium. I don't know. They keep changing the term for free with a .edu account, and I can dig that up. So I have the Pro thing, but I can get into Google Labs. You can get into labs.google for for free. If anybody has any questions or anything that you wanted to share as we're wrapping up. I think most of them, to your question, Sherry, some of them, if they say try it now, you can definitely use them for free. If they say learn more or join waitlist, those ones are ones that you may need to be signed into a paid account in order to get, or you might have to join like a beta group. Well, I appreciate all of you being here today. Um, And thank you. This is a huge intro session. This is a huge topic with a lot to cover. Um, Future sessions, I think, are going to be a lot more interactive. So, but I wanted everybody to have a good base for where to be operating from in terms of what we're talking about here. So, I appreciate you all. Thank you for the nice, positive feedback. I'm always willing to talk about this stuff with people. So if you ever want to drop me a line or if you have questions about something, again, I am not an expert, but I will do my best to try and help you out or at least give you a listening ear to understand some of the stuff with. So I really appreciate you all coming to this session, and I hope that you'll join us for our next session, which is actually going to be as we're finishing up. Uh, it's going to be Friday, June 25th with Dr. Sonia Howell. She's going to be exploring her frame method that she's come up with for how to evaluate different AI tools. And she's going to go into how to find and locate different tools and determine whether or not they're going to be useful for you. So yes, and this presentation is recorded. We are hopefully going to be posting it on our new AI hub that's going to be on the Jackson College website. So watch this space. When we do unveil that, we'll be sending out a message probably in the newsletter about where to find that. Many kudos to Ashley for Banks for throwing that hub together. So watch the space and you can have everybody check it out. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully, it's a nice one. I appreciate all of your time.
Really nice job.
Thank you.
It's going to be a hard one to follow. No, I thought you, one of the things that's often overlooked is this whole concept of data centers and the impact that's going to have on everybody. Um, should we put a data center to support one of these large language models in an area or not? If we do, is there an electric infrastructure already in place that's going to be able to handle the increased transmission load on the distribution network itself? Um, are you willing to put up with outages just to support the data center going 24/7, no interruptions, even though they've got
Yeah.
backups? Um, are you willing to, who's going to pay for that increased expenditure by someone like Consumers Power for updating their transmission lines? I mean, we saw a couple of years ago what happened down in Texas when that system was stressed. It went down for
Yeah,
a week.
absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that are swirling around here. And I heard that this big, beautiful bill that they're trying to get through Congress, there's a stipulation in there that no state can interrupt with any AI improvement for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that would probably impact this whole copyright issue and all the lawsuits that are in place. So, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to be just to be generous with my wording. These are interesting times.
They are interesting times for sure. Yeah, I mean, I could have done you can do a whole presentation just on the environmental impacts are like really hard to wrap your mind around. And I think
Yeah,
I know it's easy for me to not think about that. So I was trying to get it a little bit into context. But it's hard to know, especially as we ramp up use, what that's
I've
going to
been,
look like.
I've been looking at that fairly consistently over the last couple of weeks, and you did a really nice job.
Thank you.
hitting the high spots.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jen. We'll talk
Yep.
to you later.
Yep. Have a good one.